Greetings and salutations, YouTubers. This is Zillafan85, and of course, as the holidays are upon us, I just wanted to go ahead and make this little video just to kind of go over, some things that I like to watch during the holiday time. This is just some stuff that I personally like. This is no sort of objective list of like the best movies or any of that. I'm not getting into any of that. This is just what I consider a neat little video just to kind of discuss some of the things that I like to watch during the holidays. I just thought this would be kind of a cool little video to make. There is no sort of order on these movies or anything like that. Like I said, this is just what I like. Some of my favorites, and again, I do want to illustrate some, so this is not everything that I watch during the holiday time. But just some of the stuff that I kind of wanted to highlight. So I just thought that this would be kind of a fun little thing to do. And please note, I'm certainly no expert on any of these movies, to really give a lot of information. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to go through some of what I like to watch, just in case any of you, were interested and just with it being the holiday time, I just thought this would be fun to do. So like I said, though, it's not going to be any sort of in-depth thing that I go over with any of what I'm gonna have on the list included here. And I do want to note too that it's not gonna be like all movies that are on here. So I did want to note that too. But other than that, though, like I said, I just kind of want to go through some of these. I'm not really going to get into too much either, but just in case, in case I do have any spoilers that I mention, just be forewarned, of course, if there's anything that you haven't seen here. But anyways, though, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So, with that, the first selections that I wanted to bring up on the list are, these are definitely among my favorites, so I will say, and that, of course, are the first two Home Alone movies, Home Alone and Home Alone 2, obviously produced by, both of these produced by John Hughes, directed by Chris Columbus. I know that they were actually... To the original Home Alone, there were actually 4 sequels that were made, but to me, only the first 2 are the ones that I really care for at all. Just my personal preference. These were the only 2 that both included the original cast, with their respective roles in the films. So obviously starring at the time kid actor Macaulay Culkin, his true breakthrough role, Home Alone, of course. And then obviously Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern in the movie as well, as sort of his co-stars, the antagonists, obviously. This to me, like especially the original Home Alone, like obviously John Hughes has had so many big smash hit films, so many that I loved, including these 2, but certainly others like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is one of my favorites from him. I watch that one religiously. I love that movie. The Breakfast Club, Uncle Buck, I love that. The list goes on and on. And they were all smash hits, but to me his true home run was really Home Alone, at least the way I kind of see it anyway. So it was just a great story, and as a kid, you can always really get into it, with Macaulay Culkin playing Kevin McAllister. He gets obviously, like the title says, he's stuck home alone while his family is in Paris, not realizing that they just kind of forgot to get him and to bring him when they left for the airport, and then they didn't realize until they were on the plane. So that's kind of the basis for the story. And then, of course, Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern playing the bandits, the Wet Bandits, as they were known in the original, Harry and Marv, respectively. And and Kevin trying to thwart them and setting all kinds of booby traps for them towards the third act, the climax of the film. And just such a lot of slapstick humor, and which I happen to really love. I love silly slapstick humor. Excuse me. Always have, always will. That's why stuff like this, love Mel Brooks's films, and then of course like the classics like The Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, etc., etc. So I love anything slapstick, basically, and it's got a lot of great elements in that, but it's also got a lot of very touching elements too. You really end up feeling for Kevin once he really, at first he's happy about his family being gone, but then he really realizes how much he misses them and how much he needs them and wants to be with them, and you really feel for him. And it's a very touching story, and when they're when he's reunited with them at the end, you really do have that heartwarming feeling. So fantastic. And as far as Home Alone 2 Lost in New York goes, I know it's got sort of mixed feelings from, critics don't really care for it too much. I know they kind of bash on it, and fans, I think, kind of have mixed feelings. I happen to really like Home Alone 2. Personally, I don't like it as much as the original, but I do happen to really like it a lot, though. And, of course, it's a sort of similar plot, but this time he does go to the airport. Kevin does go to the airport with his parents, but then he gets on the wrong plane, and they end up in Miami, where they were supposed to go, and he ends up in New York. So, but he's got his dad's credit card and stays at the Plaza Hotel, which of course you get that famous cameo with Donald Trump, who actually owned the hotel at the time. So that was an interesting little thing there. And then obviously you've got the likes of Tim Curry and Rob Schneider in the film as well. Playing employees at the hotel that he's at, and so that adds a little extra element to it. And then randomly enough, Harry and Marv end up in New York when they escape from prison and start calling themselves the Sticky Bandits this time, and planning to rob a toy store. And when Kevin runs into them, they run into him, whatever you want to call it, and Kevin finds out about their plans. He sets out to stop them, and so he's got an uncle with who's got an apartment that I guess is being renovated at the time, so he sets up more booby traps for them, and eventually leads them to Central Park, and with a little bit of aid, from the pigeon lady, just like he had help from the old man with the shovel in the first film, manages to capture them again, get them turned into the police. So, again, really funny. This slapstick humor is definitely more over the top in the second one, especially with the traps that he sets. And, obviously in real life, there's no humanly way possible that anyone can survive what he does to them. But, oh my gosh, though, it is just so freaking hilarious, or at least I find it to be so anyways. So, like I said, I love the Home Alone films, Home Alone and Home Alone 2 I'm talking about. So, make sure I always watch those, and these, all the ones that are on the list here too, I should say, when I watch them, a lot of times, it'll be like my friend and I, we have like our holiday marathon. We'll get together, exchange gifts, and then we'll, we'll watch all this stuff together a lot of the times. So I do that. Plus I watch it plus I watch these movies and whatnot by myself as well. So that's just sort of something I wanted to note. So, but it's always so much fun for me. So continuing on though. Alrighty, next up on the list, I'm sure a lot of people will kind of bash down on me, but that's okay, though. Talking about, of course, Jingle All the Way, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I happen to be a big fan of. I love Arnold, and then co-starring Sinbad and Phil Hartman, and I happen to really love this movie. I know it's kind of the movie that people seem to love to hate, I guess, if you will, but this happens to be another one of my favorites, honestly. I really, really love Jingle All the Way. This one was released in 1996. the first two Home Alone movies, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, the first one was released in 1990. The second one was released in 1992. So this one came out, a few years later. Obviously, like I said, 1996. This was also directed by Chris Columbus, though, who directed the first two Home Alone movies. So another reason, kind of why I wanted to backtrack a little bit, just to point that out. So that's why it has a little bit of a similar sort of feel to it, I guess you would say. It's just a very zany plot where Arnold, having to get his son, played by Jake Lloyd, who's more famously known as young Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, which, I guess that's sort of a guilty pleasure Star Wars film to me, honestly. The more I see of these newest renditions of the Star Wars movies, honestly, the more I have appreciation for the prequels. I'll just kind of be honest with that as far as going off in that little tangent goes. But, of course, nothing is going to beat the original trilogy of the Star Wars films. I love those movies so much. But anyways, back on to the topic here. So Arnold's son in the film, the big craze at the time were these Turbo Man toys, these action figures, dolls, in the film that all the kids were wanting, and everybody was trying to get them for their kids, and of course they're selling out everywhere. It was a takeoff of at the time the Power Rangers toys, and Buzz Lightyear toys were very, very popular, so that's kind of where the takeoff was. And then actually in real life too, about the same time that this came out is when those Tickle Me Elmo dolls came out, and those became a huge craze. So that was sort of a weird coinky-dink that sort of all that sort of came to fruition at the time that this movie came out. So Arnold's because obviously he's pretty much plays a father who's really wrapped up in his work and not paying enough attention to his family, and now he's basically in a bind, Christmas Eve, and he's got to try to find a Turbo Man doll, action figure for his son, and he's going all over town. The setting is in, I believe, Minneapolis, and so he's just, on this weird, wacky adventure trying to find the toy for his son, and it's very, very zany, and Sinbad's sort of his character sort of on the same mission, but he basically kind of becomes the antagonist going against Arnold as they both search for the Turbo Man figure, so it just makes for some really weird stuff. But it was a sort of a play on too about the whole sort of consumerism thing, especially around the holiday times. With these I guess you would say, as Sinbad sort of pointed out in the movie, these toy conglomerates taking advantage, and just the way that people unfortunately tend to act during the holidays with buying and whatnot. So there is sort of an interesting take on that, but it's obviously just done in a very slapsticky sort of way. But again, I love it. I know, like I said, a lot of people bash on it, but to me it had some great elements in it, especially arguing with his neighbor, Phil, played by Phil Hartman, who's got a thing for Arnold, who's got a thing for his wife in the film, and he's over there eating Arnold's cookies on Christmas, and Arnold gets mad at him, with that famous line, "Put that cookie down," So I love that. And then of course the famous Turbo Man catchphrase, "It's turbo time." So I love all that stuff. It had so many great things. It does go in a weird direction at the end with the Christmas parade, and then Turbo Man being Arnold being placed in that Turbo Man suit, and then with Sinbad grabbing the guy who was supposed to be playing Turbo Man's arch nemesis Dementor, and putting that suit on, and oh boy, it does go in sort of a weird direction there at the end. But I'm a huge superhero fan anyway, so I kind of do appreciate it. But yeah, it's a very, very strange film, but it's one that I really love, and my friend and I always watch during the holidays. So anyways, carrying along here. And of course, next up, we've got the very famous National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. This movie, released in 1989, certainly is a Christmas classic, one I love. It's the third of the National Lampoon's Vacation films. Obviously with the starring Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo, as the Griswolds. And of course, with their children, Rusty and Audrey. This time around, Rusty actually being played by John Galecki, who we more famously know as Leonard from Big Bang Theory, which is certainly a show I love, one of my favorites. Not so much the newer seasons, but the old seasons to me are awesome. Anyway, though, so Clark Griswold, obviously played by Chevy Chase, wanting to have the perfect holiday, basically, and having the family by, and it's just a take on the whole craziness during the holidays with family and everything, and him, getting over the top with everything, and it's just a really awesome film. There's not, really much I can say about it that hasn't already been said, but it is a Christmas classic, and it's one that I definitely love to watch during the holiday time. As far as the vacation movies go, it is kind of a tough one to say because I do love the first National Lampoon's Vacation, but I do think as far as the vacation movies go, this is to me probably the cream of the crop. So I definitely love this and definitely watch it, every year during the holidays. So excuse me, sorry. So anyway, though. I think that kind of covers it for that. So let's just go ahead and move along. And next up on the list, we've got Scrooged, starring Bill Murray and Karen Allen. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. This is definitely another one of my favorites. I really love this movie. It was directed by Richard Donner, who actually, from what I understand, clashed a lot with Bill Murray during the filming of this, that they had different ideas of the direction that they should go in. But this is like a modern retelling of A Christmas Carol, from Charles Dickens. And it's really excellent. It's like a horror. It's like a Christmas horror comedy, but it's one that I really love. And always try and watch during the holiday time. It's like I said, it's one of my favorites. Bill Murray does such an amazing job. He's such a great performance, over the top as always, and when you see him in that sort of like a real sleazy, underhanded, asshole kind of role, at the beginning of the film when he's playing this curmudgeon character, much in the light of Ebenezer Scrooge. He does such a great job at it. And then when things start to hit the fan, when the supernatural element takes in, he's visited by the ghosts. First the ghost of his former boss, and then of course the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future. The Ghost of Christmas Past, played by David Johansen, and Ghost of Christmas Present, played by Carol Kane. I wanted to point out, who both do a great job in the movie. So once that starts happening, and he starts, Bill Murray starts losing his mind and everything, and then starts realizing the error of his ways. It's just really awesomely done, and very has so many funny elements, a lot of spooky elements too. Which is sort of indicative of A Christmas Carol, because it did have sort of like a dark sort of side to that story, so it does make a lot of sense that they went in that direction. But it never loses its humor. So even if you're starting to feel that sort of creepy supernatural feel to it, then you still get hit with with a lot of really over the top funny humor, which I happen to love. During the movie. And again, this is definitely one of my favorites, and one that I always watch every year during the holidays. This film, I think I said before, is from 1988. So it's a trend. A lot of these movies from this time period, 80s and 90s, these Christmas movies, I really love. So anyway, though, let's go ahead and move to the next one. Yes. Of course, I can't not talk about the very famous movie A Christmas Story from 1983, the one where the character Ralph. Well, we've got the adult version of Ralph narrating the movie, and then of course is talking about his childhood Christmas when he wanted that Red Ryder air rifle gun, and of course the infamous line that came out of the film, "You'll shoot your eye out," and then the leg lamp. We I'm sure many of you already know how A Christmas Story goes, so I'm not going to cover it too much. It is sort of one of those overplayed films, I will say that, with the fact that they the networks like TBS and whatnot always run it for 24 hours on Christmas. I don't really understand why they do that. I mean, I can understand them having it, but but there's so many other great Christmas movies, holiday movies. Why don't you mix it up and like show a whole bunch, as a marathon during the day instead of 24 hours of one thing? So that's the one thing I don't get with it, and I will, I do try when it is on the network like that. I do try to watch it at least once, during Christmas Day. But I'm certainly not going to sit there and watch it all day. That's a little redundant. So that's the one thing I don't get with it. And like I said, it is sort of one of those movies that is sort of, in my opinion, kind of overplayed on Christmas. But at the same time, I do include it because I do really like the movie a lot. There's a lot of really funny points to the movie, and really, just one of those great movies that you watch during the holidays. So it is one that I definitely wanted to include on my list. So let's go ahead, though, and carry on from there. And of course, with this one, maybe a little bit of outside the box thinking here. But oh my goodness, I love this. Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean. This is an episode of the show, Mr. Bean. And it's, of course, the sort of Christmas episode that they have, Christmas special, if you will. And this is my absolute favorite episode of Mr. Bean. I'm a big fan of the series, and I like the movies that they made later on after the series was over as well. Especially Mr. Bean's Holiday, which I think came out in 2007, I think. I believe so, anyway. But anyway, though, as far as this episode goes in particular, like I said, for me, this is the cream of the crop as far as Mr. Bean goes. This is so hilarious. My friend and I have a tradition for sure that we have to watch this every year during the holidays. We're both big fans of Mr. Bean, anyways, and we love this episode in particular so much. It's got, as usual, split into 3 acts, and the first act with him at the store buying things for Christmas, and when he's getting ready to pay for the stuff that he bought, and then he sees like this little figure set of the nativity, and and he decides to start messing with it, and all you see is the figures of the nativity, and then just his hands going and playing with the figures and stuff, and then he starts doing like some really weird stuff, like having like tanks fight a T-Rex, and then one of the Daleks from Doctor Who comes out, and I guess so. And then you got random sheep that he's got, and oh my goodness, it's great. And then he has to use like this magnet thing to airlift baby Jesus to safety, and the store clerk, who I guess catches wind of what he was doing, you randomly see him with like a police figure there, who's just kind of show up on the screen, and Mr. Bean's like surprised by it, and it's just, oh my goodness, it's great. And then ends up shifting back to his apartment on Christmas, and with him just getting into the spirit and everything. And then I guess his girlfriend's coming over for dinner on Christmas Day, and he's got a turkey, and loses his watch in the turkey when he's trying to stuff it, and so he tries to find it, and the turkey ends up on his head, and scares the girlfriend with it, and she has to help him get the turkey off of his head, and yeah, so very zany. And then ends up when they do their gift exchange, he, being Mr. Bean, didn't really get that she wanted him to get her an engagement ring, and instead, when she's pointing at the store that had the ring, he sees a poster of a man giving a woman a ring, and he ends up buying that poster for her because I believe that's what he thinks that she wanted. And I don't know what the jeweler in the store was thinking to sell that to him, but nonetheless, though, she's pretty shocked and quite pissed, as I don't blame her there. And then, when he sees that she's upset, then he says, "Oh, well, I forgot the main bit." And then you see a little box, which you think is a ring, but when she pulls it out, it's actually just a hook for the poster to hang it up. So, yep, you could imagine that did not end well. So she kind of storms out, and he's got a little firecracker for Christmas that he wanted to ignite, and all you see is a street, shot of after he says "Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean," and you see him ignite the firecracker, and all you see is like a white flash of light in his apartment. So yeah, oh boy, that episode is really, really zany, but oh my goodness, I love it. And like I said, my friend and I have a tradition where we have to watch that episode in particular every year. So it's called "Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean." It was released, it was aired, I should say, in 1992. So if any of you are interested, I definitely recommend that. So you will not be disappointed. Anyway, though, so let's go ahead and move to the next one. And I definitely did not want to skip on this, and I am, of course, talking about Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And I am, as you can see from the picture illustrated here, I am talking about the original, which was released in 1966, the TV special, the cartoon one, which was narrated by Boris Karloff, and he also did the voice for the Grinch as well. I do like the Jim Carrey one. I think that was a nice take on it. The one from 2006, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I did like that live action version. I have yet to see the latest incarnation, which was just released not long ago. I'm kind of on the fence about it, though. It's like, to me, it's kind of like, how many times are you gonna remake the same thing over and over again? But that's just my opinion. But to me, though, nothing will top the original. Like I said, the 66 TV cartoon special. And this was also, because I always noticed that it had sort of a Looney Tunes-ish kind of feel. And then I found out that it actually was directed and co-produced by Chuck Jones, who was, of course, famous for his work at Warner Brothers and for Looney Tunes. You definitely know that you're in good hands there. And then, of course, with Boris Karloff, narrating and doing the voice of the Grinch, you know that you're in for a real treat. And, so I absolutely, love Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And I always try and catch it every year if I can, because this, to me, is for, at least, like I said, for me, a staple, something that I like to watch each year. I think, though, that does pretty much kind of cover some of the things that I like to watch. Like I said, this is not everything. These are just some of the things that I like to watch. But with that, though. And so, folks, this does pretty much bring us to the end of the video. Again, like I just said, this is not everything that I like to watch during the holidays. These are just some of the things, some of my more favorite things to watch during the holidays, movies, shows, etc. But there are obviously, lots of other, great holiday films and TV specials and whatnot that I really like as well. I definitely do like a lot of the Rankin Bass stuff. I grew up watching those. My favorite was always Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and probably followed up by Frosty the Snowman. So I definitely love those too. I love some of the other Rankin Bass ones as well. The ones with like those, the sort of well, Frosty was a cartoon, but the others had sort of like the puppets. I guess they were, claymation or puppets, whatever. But I grew up watching those. I love those, and but there's so many others, so many classic films, and more modern era films that are great to watch during the holidays. And so there'd be way too much to cover. But like I said, these are just some of the ones that I watched. Some of my, just personally, my more favorite things that I like to watch during the holidays. And like I said, my friend and I will usually try and do our holiday-thon and watch most of this stuff together too. So like I said, this I just thought would be kind of a fun little video to put together. But this does definitely pretty much take us to the end, though. This does wrap it up. So I would like to thank you so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe, please feel free to do so. If you would like to like and or comment on any of my videos, please feel free to do so as well. Of course, with this one, I'd like to hear from some of you guys. Share with me what are some of your favorite things that you like to watch during the holidays, just share your thoughts and opinions, of course, et cetera, et cetera. But again, though, this does wrap it up. So I just want you to remember, ladies and gentlemen, I do want you to have a very happy holiday. Be safe. Have a great time. Enjoy it. And again, just remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you be good to yourselves, and sayonara.